At some point, many men notice it. The hairline that used to sit confidently across the forehead starts creeping backward. The crown looks a little thinner under bright lights. The shower drain collects more hair than usual, and suddenly a question appears that men across cultures and generations have asked, "Why is this happening to me?" Baldness isn't new, and it's definitely not rare. Yet despite how common it is, male baldness is still surrounded by myths, jokes, insecurities, and confusion. Is it stress? Is it shampoo? Is it something you did wrong? Today we're breaking it down. Why do some men get bald as they grow older? What's actually happening under the scalp, and why it affects some men more than others? Let's get into it, right here, on History of Simple Things. First things first, most male baldness isn't random shedding. It follows a predictable pattern called male pattern baldness, or androgenetic alopecia. This pattern usually starts at the temples or crown and gradually spreads over time. You'll rarely see complete hair loss on the sides or back of the head in this condition. That's because the hair follicles in different parts of your scalp are genetically programmed to respond differently to hormones. So when baldness begins, it tends to spare certain areas while targeting others. This is why many men end up with the classic horseshoe shape of hair around the sides and back. It's not coincidence, it's biology following instructions written decades earlier. A lot of people assume men go bald simply because they're getting older, but age itself isn't the direct cause. The real driver is hormones, specifically a byproduct of testosterone called dihydrotestosterone, or DHT. Testosterone is essential for male development. It influences muscle growth, voice deepening, and many other traits. But when testosterone converts into DHT, it can have an unintended side effect, shrinking certain hair follicles. In men who are genetically sensitive to DHT, this hormone binds to hair follicles on the scalp and gradually causes them to miniaturize. Each hair grows thinner, shorter, and lighter than before. Over time, these follicles may stop producing visible hair altogether, so baldness isn't about having too much testosterone. It's about how your follicles respond to DHT. This brings us to genetics. Whether or not you experience significant hair loss depends largely on inherited sensitivity to DHT. Some men have hair follicles that barely react to it at all. Others have follicles that react strongly and quickly. You've probably heard the myth that baldness comes from your mother's side of the family. That's only partially true. Hair loss genes can come from both parents, and they involve multiple genes, not just one. That's why you might see brothers with completely different hairlines, or a man with a full head of hair despite having a bald father. Genetics loads the dice, but it doesn't always guarantee the outcome. Let's zoom in on a single hair follicle. Hair grows in cycles: a growth phase, a resting phase, and a shedding phase. In a healthy scalp, this cycle repeats smoothly for years. But in male pattern baldness, DHT shortens the growth phase. Each cycle produces weaker hair than the last. Eventually, the follicle becomes so small that it produces only microscopic, barely visible hairs, or none at all. Importantly, these follicles aren't dead right away. They're just dormant. That's why early treatment can sometimes slow or partially reverse hair loss. Once a follicle fully shuts down, though, regrowth becomes much harder. If baldness is genetic, why doesn't it happen at birth? The answer lies in hormone levels. DHT production increases after puberty and stabilizes in adulthood. Over years, sometimes decades, Its effects accumulate in DHT-sensitive follicles. That's why some men notice hair loss as early as their late teens, while others don't see changes until their 40s or 50s. The process is slow and gradual, often so subtle that it's only obvious when comparing old photos. Baldness isn't sudden, it's a quiet, long-term shift happening strand by strand. There are plenty of myths about hair loss. Let's clear some of them up. Wearing hats does not cause baldness. Washing your hair frequently doesn't either. Neither does using gel, wax, or pomade in moderation. Stress can cause temporary hair shedding, known as telogen effluvium, but this type of hair loss is usually reversible and doesn't follow the classic male baldness pattern. Male pattern baldness is not caused by poor hygiene, bad products, or scalp neglect. It's an internal process, not a surface-level mistake. Ever notice that even men with advanced baldness often have thick hair on the sides and back of their heads? That's because those follicles are largely resistant to DHT. These resistant follicles are so reliable that hair transplant procedures often move them to balding areas. Once transplanted, they usually keep growing because they retain their original resistance. This contrast between sensitive and resistant follicles is what gives male baldness its distinctive shape. Hair isn't just hair. It's tied to youth, attractiveness, confidence, and identity. That's why hair loss can feel emotional, even if we don't always talk about it. For some men, going bald is barely a concern. For others, it can affect self-esteem, social confidence, or how they see themselves aging. Neither reaction is wrong. What's important is understanding that baldness is not a failure, not a flaw, and not a reflection of health or masculinity. It's simply one of many ways human bodies change over time. So why do some men go bald as they grow older? Because of genetics, because of hormones, because hair follicles respond differently to time and chemistry. It's not punishment, poor care, or personal failure. It's biology doing what it's programmed to do. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.